welcome to The Bite. My name is Jackie. Today I'm going to share with you a really traditional classic bread stuffing that you might find on a holiday table like Thanksgiving or Christmas. This is how my family always made it. It's very common, not really much difference from any other classic bread stuffing, but I wanted to bring it to you in case you're looking for a really simple, easy recipe that you can present, and it really does not. We're kind of scaling down. It seems like a lot of people are scaling down for the holidays this year, so I wanted to bring you something that was not super large in size and is a good portion for serving your guests and for leftovers. So I think this is a great recipe to share. So let me show you what you'll need. So of course you're gonna need the bread. I like to use French bread, and definitely you want to have it at least a day old so that it's a little bit stale. And that's for a couple of reasons. I like to tear the bread, and if it's fresh, when you're tearing it, you're pushing down on the center of the bread and it loses its volume, which will have an impact on the final dish. So when it's stale, it also holds a lot of flavor and it doesn't get super soggy and bread pudding-ish like. So definitely you want it to be at least a day old, and even if you rip it apart like this and set it out for about an hour or so, and we're still gonna bake this too for a little bit. So anyways, that's the bread portion. I've got some carrots and celery, some onions, a little bit of butter, an egg, some parsley, some poultry seasoning, because you know I love me some poultry seasoning, salt, pepper, and some chicken broth. And that's really it. That's how, so in my family, my aunt was the one that always made the stuffing, and this is really how she always made it. And I loved the addition of carrots in it. I don't know if everybody adds carrots. It seems like, nope, not everybody does, but I love it because one, I love the color, and I just think it adds the full trio, the carrots, celery, and onions. I think it does a lot here. So we're gonna stick the bread in the oven first, right before we saute our veggies. So I just wanna drizzle a little bit of olive oil on the bread. And we are going to be adding some low sodium chicken broth, but I do want to just lightly season the bread with a bit of salt, just so that we know that and pepper, just so that we know that every layer is getting some flavor. Okay, and then I just give it a quick toss with my hands. Just, I mean, really quick, like it doesn't need to be perfect at all. And we're gonna stick this into an oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes, or until the bread becomes pretty crisp. Usually that's about 20 minutes for me. Depending on your oven, it could be 10-15 minutes. So just keep an eye on it till it's like kind of starting to get golden brown and it's crisped up. So while the bread is toasting up in the oven, I'm going to start working on sauteing my vegetables. So I have a couple tablespoons of butter here, and I'm just going to add that to the pan and let it start to melt. I think butter works really well here because one, it's the holidays, and that rich flavor of the butter is just very homey and cozy. And it also goes really well with the carrots, celery, and onions. But if you wanted, you can absolutely use olive oil here instead. So that's fine, it doesn't need to melt all the way, but I'm gonna add in all the veggies, and I want them to saute a little bit. They don't need to get like golden brown, but I do want them to just soften and kind of start to wilt a little bit. And we'll add some salt and pepper and the poultry seasoning here as well. That butter has melted, the veggies are starting to sweat a little bit. Now is a good time to start adding the salt and the pepper. All the ingredients and the directions are going to be on my blog, which is the first link in the description box, as usual for all my recipes. And I wanna know, do you guys call it stuffing or dressing? Here in the South, I moved to the South a few years ago, and it seems like here they seem to call it dressing, but where I'm from in San Diego, it was always stuffing. So what do you guys call something like this? I don't actually stuff my turkey with this or any kind of poultry. I actually keep it on the side. So I'm curious, let me know in the comments. So I just added a little bit of salt and pepper. You don't want to add too much salt because again, we're going to be adding that chicken stock, and that's going to have a good amount of seasoning in there, but just enough to add a little bit of flavor. Then I'm going to add in my poultry seasoning, which I love. And if you aren't familiar with this, it's kind of like rosemary, sage, thyme, all of those really fall-ish spices that are ground up, and it just makes for the most, it makes things taste like home. I'm using that word a lot, but this is the time of year where you want that kind of homey food. I really use this year round, but I know a lot of people tend to use it for Thanksgiving. So to me, this is looking good. I'm gonna let it cook a little bit longer till the carrots get a little softer, and then I'll let it cool before we add it to the bread. So the veggies have softened, the onions mostly, but the carrots are gonna soften a little bit more in the oven when the stuffing bakes. So I'm gonna turn this heat off, let this cool, and let it sit here until the bread is done, and then we'll get to putting everything together. So the bread was in the oven for 20 minutes. I removed the pan from the oven and I increased the heat of my oven to 375. You can see that the tops are starting to get nice and golden brown, and that's only gonna continue as we bake it, and the oven's preheated now. So I'm actually gonna take all this bread and put it into a large bowl so that I can mix everything together. All right, bread is all in here. You can mix everything in the baking dish while it's still warm. It's better if you let it cool, because if you don't, you risk, when we add the egg, you risk kind of scrambling the egg in there, and it just won't have the same effect. So I like to do it all in here, and actually the chicken broth will kind of help everything cool before we add the egg. So now I'm gonna add all my veggies in and all my parsley that has been chopped. So I wanna just kind of give this a little bit of a head start and mix these things together. All right, everything is mixed in, looking good. I'm going to start by slowly incorporating. I want to just mix this up a little bit more. Slowly incorporating the chicken broth, and just like half of it, give it a mix before we add the other half. Alrighty, that is all in there. Just want to mix this up. I don't really want to see a pool at the bottom of the bowl of the chicken broth, because I want the bread to soak it up. And again, I don't want it to be so soggy. I still want it to have a lot of texture. We like crunch in my family, but if you like yours to be a little softer, then you can up the amount of broth that you put in. I'm also going to crack an egg, and I'll just stick this right there. I want to give this a little mix before adding it right on in. And then that's the last thing before everything goes back. I'm just making a mess today. That's the last thing before everything goes back into the same 9x13 baking dish and it gets put back in the oven. So once I get this all mixed in, it's gonna go right back in here. This is such a beauty, and it's going to kind of redevelop its shape and get that golden crust yet again on top. And that's why I like to toast the bread, because if I didn't, again, you could just use stale bread and eliminate the toasting step, but to me, that is what allows it to keep its integrity a little bit better, and that's how I prefer it. If you wanted to have more of like a bread pudding texture, like I mentioned, you don't have to toast the bread, and you can add more broth. But to me, this is how we've always done it and how I'm going to continue to do it. So this is going to go back in the oven at 375 till the top gets nice and golden brown and until everything is cooked through. So the stuffing was in the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. You can see it's developed a really nice golden brown color on top, and that bread is crispy, and I am ready to dig in for a bite. And this goes so well with like a roasted turkey or roasted chicken, which by the time you see this, I think you will have seen the roasted chicken video that I just recently posted. But the flavors are they just scream fall to me. So I want a lot of veggies, and you can see there's still a lot of texture to it, It's soft, but then there's pieces that are crispy, and that's how I love to eat my stuffing. So, I'm ready. It screams Thanksgiving. It screams holiday, and it's gonna go perfect on your table. I can't wait for you to give this a try. It comes together so easily and requires very few ingredients, all of which you probably will have on hand during the holidays. So don't forget to tag me on Instagram and Facebook at The Bite with Jackie when you make this, because I know you're gonna absolutely love it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Bite.